we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back to when the first electric car existed, and that was in 1839. A fellow by the name of Anderson in Scotland came up with that. Batteries weren't too much up to par, but the electric motor was there. And there are various things in the one part that you'll see on my outline. There's and it is red color coded. It's the early history of EVs. A look at early EV history. And it kind of goes through a little bit of chronology there that shows the various things that were going on. Just a few items that were going on up to the turn of the century. Now, it was only found a couple of years ago that the very first car that Ferdinand Porsche designed and built was an electric car. They didn't know that until a couple of years ago, until it was found. And so that was kind of interesting. And so that's on the front page of that. But as we move on in time, a lot of activity came to play at the turn of the century. 1898 was when things were starting to kick into gear, and it went there for about 20 years. A lot of things were happening. And as we look at what was going on, a few things were even happening here in Colorado in regards to electric cars. There was an individual by the name of Fritzley who manufactured batteries in Denver, also was manufacturing electric cars for a while. I think he made a total of somewhere around 500 electric cars. And he built this car and had these batteries, and he was claiming a 100-mile range back then. Wow. with the Fritzley electric car. And he had it all set up, and so what he did is he went back to, he took the car, and since there weren't hardly any places that he could charge the car, he put it on rail, took it to Kansas City, I believe it was, and he drove that car from Kansas City clear back to New York City. And he had to total the Oldsmobile somewhere along the line that had internal combustion problems. But that was one of the things that took place here in Colorado. So I'm going to back up here just a tad. There were approximately 20 U.S. manufacturers in the United States. I mean, electric cars were just really, getting with the program, because prior to that, steam cars were it. And the internal combustion car hadn't quite come to life yet. In 1907 to 1939, Detroit Electric built almost 13,000 electric cars. They probably built more electric cars than all the rest of the companies put together. Everybody was trying to get in the program. And hybrids were even 1898, I think it was Woods Electric. They were doing a hybrid. There were some others that were doing a hybrid. And by the way, I have this in PDF form, and so if you want this, I can email it to you. So you've got the links in addition to everything that's there. Now, General William Jackson Palmer, who was the founder of Colorado Springs, big in the railroad business, in the southern Rio Grande Railroad, the narrow gauge railroad. A lot of it is down, you're familiar with the Cumbre and Toltec Railroad, Durango to Silverton. He was involved in a lot of that, and the whole southwestern part of the state was involved there. But he had a horseback riding accident and broke his 5th vertebrae. It's pretty much paralyzed the waist down, or from the neck down. And somebody suggested to him that he get an electric car because it didn't have the vibration of the internal combustion engine. He did. He ordered it from Pope Waverly, had a special reclining chair put in the back in place of the back seat. And up until a couple of years ago, I ran across a couple of things, did a little research in the New York Times, and lo and behold, found out about this car, went to the Penrose, or the Pioneers Museum, Colorado Springs Pioneers Museum, asked him about cars that Palmer had. They had a picture of 3. One was the white Steamer, that was the brand, and 2 other cars unidentifiable. But lo and behold, through this description from New York Times, the Polk Waverly Electric that General Palmer had was identified at that time. That particular information is in one of the last pages of the red one up there. It's actually on page 4 in the red color code in the book there. So if you want more information on that, that's there. And again, we touched on Fritchley already. He's on page 5. And there's a couple of pictures of his car in there. A lot more information on Wikipedia. So the Detroit Electric was the last one to be in business to produce electrics somewhere in the mid-30s. Mentioning the Detroit Electric, a couple of tidbits here. One is the Dow family in Denver. They were in the cattle business. Mamie Dow, ring any bells? Eisenhower's wife. The Dow family had a 1914 Detroit Electric. And there's a history book down in the History Museum down in Colorado Springs. Shows a picture of President Eisenhower sitting there with his arm out the window in this Detroit Electric. I found out later it was up for auction. I took all the money I had and went to Denver to the auction. When it got over what I wanted and what I had, then it was a battle between 2 people, and a guy from Ponca City, Oklahoma, bought that car for $17,500, and this is probably about 20 years ago. And it was a beautiful restoration. I asked the guy why he was selling it, so he would have money for his daughter's wedding.
Oh.
She's still married. So now, since that was kind of a real fast sketch there, the Electric Auto Association was a group of people that were started out in California in 1967. And they started by taking Volkswagen bugs, using motor starter generators out of World War II airplanes, and an adapter plate, and putting these together and creating their own electric cars. If you wanted an electric car back then, you had to make your own. Of course, everything was still lead acid at that particular point in time. 40 mile range was about good what you could get on most anything that you converted. Now, a guy came up from Florida, happened to look in the yellow pages and found battery power unit, and that was up in Golden, and the guy's name was Darwin Dykes, and they got together and got to talking, and lo and behold, that was the beginning interest in electrics in the Denver area, and the Denver Electric Vehicle Council was founded. So for 42 years we've been trying to keep up. I saw there's a few DEVC members that have infiltrated the group here tonight. And so in 1974, that's when the DEVC was founded, and I got into it a few months after that. There was an International Electric Vehicle Exposition, and you'll find that in the green one on page 4 and 5. That was I got to remember that. The founding of the DEVC on the green one on page 4 and 5. That's a picture of George Gliss. How many have heard of George Gliss? A couple of DEVC members. Okay, I'm going to tell you about George Gliss real fast. He was a professor in electrical engineering here at CU here in Boulder. And he was very enthusiastic about alternative transportation, the electric car. Our big push for electrics back then was twofold. Energy dependence and pollution. Those are the 2 things. But in the green one, on page 4 and 5 over there, that one has some pictures of George and his wife Jean, and some of the electrics that were given to CU here in Boulder by Colorado Public Service Company, and which is now part of XL. But those cars are there. You can get a PDF on that if you'd like it. And but he was the driving force for the DEVC. He was the treasurer and he was the newsletter editor for years and years and years, and he kept it going. Back in those days, you had to type it all up, had to make the copies, had to mail the copies, all of that sort of thing. And so it was, he was unbelievable. He really was. And but shortly thereafter, in 1977, there was an International Electric Vehicle Symposium that was held here in the United States. It was held in Chicago. And they had had a few prior to that were held in foreign countries, in Germany, this sort of thing. And so I was really enthusiastic at that time, and I went and took some slides then. And some of those slides I have in the black binding, so that if you want to see what some of the electric cars looked like back then. And there was experimentation going on with the auto manufacturers. A lot of things. There was companies like Copper Development and some of the others that were building up an electric car just for promotional type item. They had one of the coolest ones. And then from then, it kind of died down a little bit, and in 1996 things started to come up a little bit. And GM put out the EV1. It was a lease arrangement, and they had it for a while, and they took there was a plant that made a particular model of the Buick, and it looks very much like what the EV1 or vice versa was. And but federal law kind of required that you maintain parts and all this sort of thing where you can keep up the automobile and so on and so forth for an extended period of time, and GM decided they weren't interested in that, so they collected them all up and crushed them.
What kind of battery did it have?
They had lead acids. And that was the time frame where the movie came out about who killed the electric car, and that's what brought that about. A lot of people have seen that. But it kind of floated along there for a few years with various manufacturers doing things. Nissan, they had it was kind of like a real cab forward pickup that was at the International Exposition in Chicago in 1977, and there's pictures of that. But at 2000 is when the Toyota Prius came along, the hybrid, and that really got a lot of people excited. They were selling Priuses like hotcakes, and so nothing plug-in, so to speak, yet. That was just a hybrid that gave you better fuel efficiency. But in 2012 or 2010 rather, that's when the sale of the Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Bolt came about. And in that time frame, when that began, and that's got a yellow code on it, there is a chart in there that shows the progression of sales of plug-in hybrid and electric cars over the last, it's been about 5.5 years now. We're approaching 6 years. And you can see that on there. I can send you the PDF on it. There's also going to be a link that's there that you can go and see the latest, because the guy that does this chart is in southern Utah. He keeps that up to date. But as of right now, there are about 500,000 electric and hybrid electric cars in the United States. And all of this has taken place in the last 5.5 years.
Hybrid electric to mean plug-in, not just a hybrid.
Yeah, a plug-in hybrid or a plug-in electric vehicle. And so what this is doing, it's showing how progression is going. And we're on an exponential curve. Things are really growing fast. And it turns out that about 65% of the people that are interested in solar are interested in electric cars and vice versa. So this is cool too. We got a good thing going. Now, some of the latest things have been happening. Well, first of all, the Tesla Model S. Well, in 2008, the Tesla Roadster came about. And in 2012, the Tesla Model S replaced the Roadster. And the fastest motorcycle in the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb was the Lightning Electric, and that was in 2013. And that motorcycle was ridden by the person who currently holds the fastest for a motorcycle, Carlin Dune. And but that was on a gas vehicle. That particular year, the electric went up. In Wheat Ridge, we've got the kilojoule and the kilocycle. Anybody heard of those? Yep. And Eva Hackinson and Bill DeVay, they've been working on that one. They have a registered 270 miles an hour on the Bonneville salt flat. I have a particular article that shows the covers off of the motorcycle if you want to see what that looks like, and so forth. The parachute apparatus in the back to slow it down so it'll stop. Wheat Ridge High School STEM builds a hydrogen car for the Shell Eco Marathon in 2015. There were 16 students in the class. They built this vehicle from scratch. And the Shell Eco Marathon has two categories, prototype and production. They did the prototype. They went back to the Shell Eco Marathon that year, and there were like 7 competing in that category. 5 of them didn't pass inspection, or 4 of them didn't. And there was 3 left. A little high school back in New York, a little junior college up in Oregon or Washington, and the Wheat Ridge. They came out on top, came home with a $2,000 check. They won that year. That really built up the students at the Wheat Ridge. And the next year, which was the last school year, they had 60 instead of 16. They built 2 prototypes, one prototype and 1 production car. And there's links on that one. If you look at that, that's on the one with the white, and that's on page 5 and 6. And that tells a little bit about that. They'll tell you more about the Shell Eco Marathon. For next year, coming up, I believe it's like in about April, they're going to take 2 cars back again to the Shell Eco Marathon. Not only are they going to do that, but they're going to build up a solar challenge car for a solar car challenge that's going to be in Texas. And they're going to be doing that. A couple of our DEVC members are going to be over there kind of giving them a little guidance and direction at the beginning of that. But they build everything themselves. Horizons, K through 8, middle school, right here in Boulder. One of the guys that was a shop teacher there really kind of wanted to bring hands-on more into the STEM, kind of like what they're doing at Wheat Ridge High School. And they're doing a program where they've taken some of the older students in the school, and they're getting a hands-on opportunity to work with electric bicycle. The first year they worked on that, it was a 3-wheel tricycle, and they put a hub motor in the front wheel and batteries and all this stuff, controller. And so they were really excited about that. So that's another thing they're doing, and they got some other projects they're going to start. They're starting next Saturday. It's going to be their first of 4 classes that they're going to have for this year. 2015 was the formation of the Colorado EV Coalition. That's a run through the Colorado Energy Office. And it's kind of a conglomerate of a lot of people that are involved with electrics in one form or another. And so there's a lot of work going there. Our latest bill that was passed here in the state kind of came from partly there and partly SWEEP, the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. That's here in Boulder. You've probably heard about that. Formation of the Denver Tesla Club and the Colorado Springs EV Club all took place in the first part of this year. There's a lot of people coming on board that really want to promote electrics. And the Sunflyer 2-seat electric trainer airplane is now going through FAA certification. So we're getting electrics not only on the street, there's electrics coming up in 18-wheelers, or on the hybrid side. But this electric airplane trainer, just to tell you a little bit about this, right now when people go to get a pilot's license, they have to put in a certain number of hours, and they have to fly trainer planes to get their hours in. A lot of these planes come from the early 70s, still burn leaded gasoline, and it costs about $75 an hour for those hours that they have to put in. With this two-seater electric, as soon as it's FAA certified, they've got 65 ordered already, and 25 of them are going to go to Spartan College over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so they can use that for training. It's only going to cost about $5 an hour of electricity, rather than $75 for fuel and that sort of thing. So it's phenomenal of what electric capability is bringing through. In 2016, Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, 100th anniversary. 3 out of the 5 fastest cars were electrics. The racing world on Pikes Peak has changed because it's gone from dirt to pavement. And in this particular issue, in the blue on page 4 and 9, shows pictures of these. This was the first year for a Tesla as a production electric to be in the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And an interesting photo that's in there is they've got all these bags of ice packed underneath as they're getting ready for race day to cool batteries down. And here's a motorcycle group over here putting electric blankets on the tires to warm up the rubber so they get better traction. A lot of things going. I tell you, that was my first year to be at the starting line, because I've been at other places. The starting line is really a cool place to be for the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And but I mentioned earlier, Colorado now has about 5,000 registered, where we have about nationwide 500,000. And we're right in the middle right now of the 6th annual National Drive Electric Week, with an event tomorrow night that was mentioned. And where can I charge my car? A couple of websites that you can go to there that will give you charging locations. There's a few fast chargers. That's called a level 3. In that, there's some being installed along I-25 from Colorado Springs, Castle Rock, at a couple of Walmart stores and that sort of thing. They haven't really put a lot of publicity into it, but if you go to one of the websites, either PlugShare or the AFDC energy.gov on fuels, alternative fuels, a lot of good information there too. So that's pretty much it for my part, and I think we'll turn it over to Jim, and he can pick up from there.